It is indeed an incredible pleasure to be amongst all of you this morning. My name is Kimberly Ellis, and I have the honor of being your mistress of ceremony today. I am here today because I believe in She the People. I believe that She the People is transforming the landscape of American politics with women of color at the vanguard. I believe that She the People will bring about a new culture that is rooted in political and social and economic justice for all of us. And at this time, I want to extend a personal thank you to the woman who birthed She the People, the woman who brought us all here today in this moment. Give it up for the incredible, the one and only Amy Allison. And so, thanks to so many of you, this event was sold out weeks ago. And in fact, there are hundreds on the wait list who are trying to get in today. I want to take a moment to find out who's in the room. I want the DJ, if she could, help us out a little bit. I know that many of you traveled near and far to be here to gather today. And so I'm going to call out a few categories, and if you find yourself in one of those, and one of those relates to you, I want you to stand up, make some noise, and get your groove on. If you got up early this morning and had to get on an airplane to come here to be here, make some noise. If you traveled by bus or by train or by car or by bike, stand up, make some noise. If you came in from the East Coast or the South, make some noise, stand up. If you're here representing the Midwest, stand up, make some noise. If you're here from the West Coast or California, stand up, make some noise. If you are an elected official, stand up, make some noise. If you are currently running for office this year, stand up, make some noise. If you have run for office before, stand up, make some noise. If you believe that She the People has the power to bring about the justice and fairness and equity for everybody, stand up, make some noise. She the People, I am, you are, we are, every woman. So I want to make sure to remind all of us throughout the day to make sure you are sharing your experience today with the world. Take out your phones. Make sure you're tweeting #SheThePeople18 to bring everyone who wasn't able to join us today into this room and into this moment. And now, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing a woman who is poised to be the first African-American woman to serve in California's statewide Board of Equalization. She is here to bring us welcoming remarks on behalf of the City and County of St. Francis. She currently serves as the president of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. Please give it up to the one and only Malia Cohen. Hello, good morning. Oh my goodness, this is such a beautiful moment. First of all, congratulations to all of you for making it here. How do you feel? That was horrible. How do you feel? Because you should be feeling amazing. Today is going to be an exciting day. And as you heard in the opening remarks from my good friend and sister, Kimberly Ellis, I want to welcome you on behalf of the city and county of San Francisco. I am your president of the Board of Supervisors. Welcome to my city. And as you know, San Francisco just recently made some history. I want to also welcome you to the city where London Breed is mayor of San Francisco. This is San Francisco's answer to number 45 in the White House. We've got our own 45 that we elected. I want to give the biggest shout out to Amy Ellison, who personally reached out to me and allowed me an opportunity to be here just to open this beautiful event. I'm excited. I want you to know that you are in the right place at the right time and doing exactly what you need to be doing. Now, for all the women that I saw that stood up, that ran for office, I want to see the entire room standing in 1 year's time. I want each and every one of you women to roll up your sleeves and start running for office, because that is exactly how we are going to continue to change, filling that pipeline with talented, beautiful, awoke, conscious women that are thriving and are ready to work. Do you hear me? Are you excited? Many changes happening, and it's going to happen not by those that are just elected, but by those that are going to be supporting elected officials, those that are heading up departments, those that are on the front line with nonprofit organizations. I want you to understand that everything counts. We must make everything count and take nothing for granted. So I hope that you have a wonderful day. I'm fired up. I'm excited for you. And I hope that you will learn a lot, open yourself, and receive everything that we are able to deliver for you today. Congratulations to all of you for showing up. My name is Malia Cohen, and rock on. Here in the Golden State, we refer to her as the chief financial officer of the 5th largest economy in the world. She's the only woman to have served in back-to-back constitutional offices. She is one of my personal sheroes. She is a woman who epitomizes what it means to be outspoken, a woman who reaches back and pulls up and lifts as she climbs. Please help me welcome to the stage California State Controller Betty Yee.
Thank you, Kimberly Ellis. Good morning, Shiva people. Thank you, Kimberly, and welcome to California. Welcome to San Francisco. I'm happy to be here with my sister and high school classmate, Malia Cohen, who's doing a wonderful job leading the city, and I look forward to welcoming her to the State Board of Equalization after this November. I want to thank Kimberly Ellis for personally lending her hand and preparing so many women to serve in elective office. And I want to just say something about Kimberly, because many of us are here to continue to support her in the work that she's doing to getting more women elected, and more women who look like us in this room elected. You know, although she did not prevail in her campaign to lead the California Democratic Party, she's now leading to build a brighter and more hopeful future, a future that is female and where women of color can take their rightful place at the table. And Kimberly could have easily walked away from politics after that defeat, but instead it emboldened her, because she knew exactly the next step she needed to take to be sure that we could still work towards social and economic justice and equity. And Kimberly, thank you very much for your continued leadership. And of course, thank you to Amy Ellison for your vision. Yes, we are talking about democracy of color, and the building of that begins right here today and will continue. So sisters, we are gathered here with purpose today, because I think all of us, I know I am, tired of being patted on the back as women of color who make things happen for others, right? I mean, we keep doing this, right? We make things happen for others. I mean, what have we read in the newspapers lately? Black women being the margin of victory for Doug Jones in Alabama. Latinas showing up in force to elect President Obama. Asian American women working to elect Asian American men to office, many of whom then don't think it important to support an Asian American sister, right, in any meaningful way to get elected herself. And more. But women making all this happen, yet very little gets delivered back in return to elevate the quality of our own lives and those of our children and our communities. Our purpose here today, and it's the reason why we're here in California, because we are home to the largest multiracial, multi-ethnic, and yes, majority women population of all the 50 states. And this is ground zero for where the change is going to happen. So our purpose here today is very intentional. We're here to build our own community of support, a community where we acknowledge that each of us belongs, a community firm in our knowledge that our collective narratives can contribute to making a difference in the direction that this country is headed. So I think some truths that we have to face. So we women of color have been regarded most of our lives as underdogs, right? And maybe still are. That narrative alone, I will tell you, is critical today as more and more Americans are facing economic insecurity. Our voice matters in the policy debates about where the new job opportunities will be when automation and AI and robotics eliminate jobs, because we can change the debate to talk about how to reimagine work, how to embrace technology, and more importantly, how to reallocate work so that we do not leave any communities behind. Our voices matter when we talk about education, because unfortunately, our civil rights fights for access to quality public education are being fought again today in the 21st century, as we witness the movement to privatize education, further segregating opportunities for learning and economic success. Our voices matter when we talk about the environment, as communities of color face the most dire consequences of air and water pollution. Yet when it comes to who the best environmentalists are, I believe it is we, women of color. When we have grown up and raised our families with not much, and when we don't have much, we have very little to waste, right? And to our sisters in our indigenous communities, who know what it means to respect the land, who knows what it means to protect our oceans, and the lessons we can learn when they are in positions of leadership and decision-making. But it's not just enough to own our own narratives. We must work to elevate those with whom we share our narratives to serve as policymakers, decision-makers, electing them to offices at all levels of government. And I just want to give a special shout out to all my sisters who are either serving already in elected office, who are running for elected office, and we know that that number is growing. Women of color are running, and we're going to keep running, and we're going to keep winning because we are confident and understand the experience, skills, and talents we bring to the table to be effective policymakers. Because we know how to create our own rules when determining what makes us viable and how to go elected when the political parties and political leadership discount us. We actually engage our constituents. We build coalitions. We are not afraid to speak of the aspirations of our communities that have been left behind, raising not necessarily the most money, but enough money to win, to be successful in our campaigns, and more importantly, turning out the vote one neighbor at a time. So we are here to really be a community and to develop our community. But make no mistake about it, we are always going to be tested about whether we measure up or not. And the answer to that question is, are we going to measure up? The answer to that is, hell yes, we are. And so, by all accounts, I will say I'm not supposed to be standing here as the CFO of the fifth largest economy. I grew up in this city, the second oldest daughter of 6 children, immigrant parents. We grew up poor. They owned a laundry and dry cleaning business. And I was good with numbers when I was growing up, and so I minded the store for my family's laundry and dry cleaning business, and they were able to sacrifice and put all 6 of us through college, and now I get to mind the great store for the great state of California. So as your controller. But my story is not uncommon. And for those of us who are immigrants or descendants of immigrants, we need to give voice to that experience. But what I do want to say is we need to just be very proud of speaking the names of those who are courageous to step up to run. We need to speak our own names as ones who are aspiring to want to do more, to be sure that we are creating better communities in which we live. And so I just want to have us acknowledge a few names going forward. Obviously, Kathy Tran, Hala Ayala, Atika, Attica Scott, Lucy Macbeth, Deborah Gonzalez, Yvonne Spicer, and we have to look forward to Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, we have Stacey Abrams, we have Lauren Underwood, Vanjie Williams, and many, many more. But I say this because everyone's talking about the blue wave sweeping across this nation, and certainly here in California. Forget about the blue wave. We like earthquakes here in California as moving things. We don't necessarily like them for the disaster, but earthquakes move things in California. And I can tell you, as She the People, we are going to be making seismic change of seismic proportions. So let's get this done, sisters. Thank you very much and welcome to California.
Folks, if you are in the windows or along the walls or standing up, please come on in and fill in the seats. We have plenty of seats over here on this side, so if you'll make your way to have a seat and get comfortable, that would be great. Please welcome at this time author, poet, performer, and English professor at Mills College and co-founder of the Voices of Our Nation Arts Foundation, Elmaz Albinator.
Salam alaikum. Let's do that again. Salam alaikum. Good morning. I have the honor of writing the anthem for She the People. It's on your cards, but let's all just stick with it here. An anthem for now in honor of She the People. The world inside and beside me are one. Change starts when you listen to the heart. Hear this. Country, you do not need a telescope to find us. Stars are among you. Shift your eyes from the corridors to the sky, from the sky to the home, from the home to the field, from the field to the classroom, hospital, factory floor, and street corners. Hear this. We are the voiceless, and we will be heard, not as a song to entertain you, not a rule to be followed or call to dinner. We call on you to listen to the voices that stream in from embattled countries and towns with names hard to pronounce and ways you do not see on TV. The world inside and beside me are one. Change starts when you listen to the heart. Country, hear this. The configuration is new again. Answers are not bought or bargained for. This is no backhaul game. Nothing is theoretical. The evidence is us. And we come here open hands to offer solution, inclusion, compassion, and generosity. Don't question it. So country, it's time to welcome the unseen and the unheard who have been doing your labor all along. But don't worry, we clean up good and stand before you with accents, bodies, all our ages and wisdoms. It is time. The world inside and beside me are one. Change starts when you listen to the heart. Thank you.
And now, it is my great honor to introduce a very special woman. She is a visionary. She is a social justice innovator. She is truly a woman who lifts up other women every step of the way. And she's someone who I consider to be a personal, dear, loving friend. I first met Amy Allison when she was running for Oakland City Council. And I had never met her before, and I just remember seeing and hearing about this incredible woman who had this vision of a more fair and just and equitable Oakland. And I kept hearing about her and hearing about her and hearing about her. And one day I was walking along the lake, Lake Merritt, and I saw a little office, and it had her signs in the window. And I walked into that office, and she said, "Hi, I'm Amy." And I said, "I know you are. I'm here to work for you." Amy, thank you so much for modeling everything that we know this world can be. She is the reason we are all here today. Please help me in welcoming the president of Democracy in Color, and the founder and our fearless leader of She the People. Give it up for Amy Allison.
Good morning. And congratulations. You're here. And whether you know it or not, we're making history right now. And as I look at you, I see making history is beautiful. I want to thank you, those of you who either came across the Bay Bridge or came across the country, 36 states in all, to be together in this moment. I'm really grateful to you, to each one of you, and for everyone who joined with me to make the vision of She the People a reality. Elmas Abinader's beautiful poem reads, "Change starts when you listen to the heart." It was my heart that led me to call for this gathering. You know, as a girl, my heart would break when I witnessed or experienced injustice. But my heart would also expand and fill when I sensed hope and connection and joy. So I first heard the call for She the People years ago, long ago, when I was a young woman in uniform here in California, and I heeded the call of conscience to oppose an unjust war. It was my heart for my hometown that inspired me to run for city council in Oakland all those years ago. But in the decades since, I have been advocating for women of color to step fully into our fierce and loving leadership and collective power. And all this time, my heart, our strongest muscle, was calling for this, a call for love of our own and others, to seek justice for everyone, to ensure that everyone belongs, and that this American democracy lives up to its greatest promise. So the stakes are really high right now. We are facing threats to our common humanity and our basic civil rights. We are witnessing active efforts from the White House and Congress to dissemble not only the laws that should protect us, but also to directly attack our communities and our values of common decency, attacks that are ripping the very fabric that holds us together. Consider what's happening right now at the Kavanaugh hearings. I came of age during Anita Hill's courageous testimony in 1991. And at that time, watching her on TV, I marveled at that young and law professor testifying to an all-white male Senate Judiciary Committee about the harassment she suffered from Clarence Thomas. I believed her then. We believed her then. But she was belittled, mocked, excoriated by the white men of both parties. Her bravery and decades of work since have created space for Christine Ford to make her powerful testimony. Remember, it was the wake of the spectacle almost 30 years ago that we organized for electoral power. And as a result, Carol Moseley Braun became the first black woman elected to the U.S. Senate. So let's be clear, organizing that's led by women of color and a multiracial force will stop Kavanaugh. And in a few short weeks, many more of our courageous leaders are going to join Senators Kamala Harris and Mazie Hirono in office. We women of color are the saving graces of our democracy. We are the ones holding up a high moral standard for the rest of the nation. Remember Alabama? And we have Tarana Burke to thank for creating a Me Too movement that's holding the powerful to account. So that's why we're gathering up here at the summit, not down in the depths where many elected officials in the White House reside. We are gathering up here at the summit to say families belong together and time's up and march for our lives and the end of the madness and the violence. All of us and all of our sisters across the nation are here at this summit telling the nation, we are She the People. And as we heard earlier today, ours is not the first generation to declare She the People. Our lineage runs wide and deep, and we come back to the spirit of Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth and Ida B. Wells and Ella Baker. She the People resounded in the words of Grace Lee Boggs and Yuri Kochiyama. She the People found voice with the first woman Cherokee chief, Wilma Mankiller, and organizer Luisa Moreno, and with young civil rights foot soldiers, Diane Nash and Ruby Sales. She the People's in the pages of A Bridge Called My Back. She the People finds inspiration with Dolores Huerta, who's in the room with us today. It was Dolores Huerta who taught the nation to say, "Si se puede." And it was exemplified by my hero, Shirley Chisholm, who began her historic run for Congress some 50 years ago today. These are our godmothers. And we follow in their footsteps, as well as so many countless other women of color leaders, many unknown or unnamed in history. They make it possible for us to be here today. We, women of color, mark our own strand in the moral arc for justice. We are leading the nation to a new, progressive political and cultural era. So consider this. In 2018, something historic is happening. 1 of 3 nominees for Congress is a woman of color. 1 of 3. '18 is the year of women of color. And women of color aren't just winning elections by chance. The Democratic Party base, now half people of color, is yearning for this change. And a Rutgers study that was published just about a week ago shows that Democrats favor candidates of color and females by a 19-point margin. They want us, and we're coming. And women of color are leading a multiracial Democratic coalition that will win in swing states and beyond this year and in 2020. But I want to be clear. These victories are not just about electing Democrats. We women of color have bigger plans for the nation. We are seeking economic, social, and racial justice. We want a country where people can live lives of dignity. And that means full access to health care, housing, and education. And when we win, we will govern with our deepest values and full humanity in view. I want to tell you something about our numbers. Since 2000, of all the women who became eligible to vote in this country, 74% were women of color. We're the fastest growing voting bloc, and we represent the most progressive voters at the polls. Black women consistently have been the highest vote turnout of any race and gender. And I know after the victory of Doug Jones in the special Senate election in Alabama, the DNC leaders tweet #ThankBlackWomen. But black women have been there since 1965, when the Voting Rights Act guaranteed our access to the polls. And no one yet has been talking about the power of the Latina, and the power of the Asian American woman, the power of the Native woman vote, the power of the Arab American woman vote. We collectively are 20% of the population, and still today, we're the least represented group. We're 3% of elected officials. But I have some good news for you. Right now, in places like Arizona, Texas, Georgia, and Florida, women of color strategists, many of whom are in the room today, are the ones who know the new playbook, how to engage and inspire people of color to go to the polls. These women of color know how to support the candidates who will fight for our community. In the primaries this year, these women of color strategists were crucial for increased voter turnout for our candidates. In the state of Georgia, 200,000 new Democrats showed up to the polls over 2014. And we can credit this wisdom and skill and strategy of these women of color. So these group of organizers know how to get things done. They understand something that I wish that the larger country understood. That swing voters are not moving. Our swing voters are not moving from red to blue. We never really thought Trump was an option. Our swing voters are non-voter to voter. And when we vote, we win. So I want to credit those organizers who worked hard every day and took a break out to join us at She the People. These women of color are the architects of our revived democracy. But America's destiny does not hinge on one administration or one party. Hope in 2018 comes from the courageous, principled women of color running and winning this year. It's Stacey Abrams, who will be the first Black woman governor in history, Georgia. It's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who beat a 10-term Democrat in New York. It's Rashida Tlaib in Michigan, our first Muslim congresswoman, and Ilhan Omar from Minnesota, our second. It's Deb Haaland, from New Mexico, who will be our first Native woman in Congress. It's Sharice Davis, LGBT congressional candidate in Kansas. It's Ayanna Pressley, who just beat a long-term incumbent in Massachusetts. It's Gina Ortiz-Jones, Filipina veteran running for Congress in Texas. There are thousands of women who are running, not only at the congressional level, but the state houses and local levels. And here's just a note from someone who ran and lost. I want to give a big shout out to the women of color who ran in the primaries and did not come away with victory this time. We understand the establishment didn't back most of us. We are working here at She the People to create our own path to victory. So you give us hope and you give us a reason to go on. So my message to you, run again. We women of color are the leaders we've been waiting for. Our country needs us, and we need each other. We are answering the call to serve, a call women of color have been answering for centuries. The work that we're doing is finally coming into view for the world to see. We're living into a democracy that we've dreamed of. It's a politics we have not yet seen. It's a faith that believes in love and justice and belonging. So let's lead the nation. She the People is preparing us over the next year to lead the nation. They need us and we need us. Thank you so much for joining us today at She the People. Thank you.
Check, check.
Please take your seats. Please take your seats. If you could please take your seats, we're going to get started. Our first panel is entitled "The Women Building a Politics for All of Us," moderated by the woman who represents California's 51st Assembly District, encompassing parts of northeastern Los Angeles and East Los Angeles. Please welcome Assemblywoman Wendy Carrillo.
Here you go.
Check, baby, 1, 2, 3. You got it? Gotta bring some hip hop, is what my sister Linda Sarsour told me once. There she is.
I love it.
Turn off all of our phones. Okay. Well, good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Good morning, she the people. My name is Wendy Carrillo. I am proud to represent the 51st Assembly District in Los Angeles. Visiting here our sister city in San Francisco. I'm going to take a moment to introduce our panelists. We have about 35 minutes, so let me just do a quick rundown as to how this is going to run. So I'll introduce folks. We have about 3 to 5 minutes for each of these wonderful leaders to talk about the work that they're doing. And we'll go for questions after that, and hopefully be able to open it up to the audience for a few questions. And again, we have about 28 minutes now, 30 minutes. Immediately to my right is Andrea Mercado, who is the Executive Director of the Florida New Majority, the group behind the stunning increase in turning out voters of color in California's primary. Andrea is leading the effort to expand voting rights to the formerly incarcerated in Florida, a national first. This would be a game changer for that swing state. Can you guys hear me okay? We need a little bit more volume on the mic. Ense Ufat is all the way to the end, and she is the Executive Director of the New Georgia Project, who is leading the way in registering and engaging voters of color and protecting voter rights in the state of Georgia, a state where the right wing has had its grip for many years. She is the author of a new playbook in the South. And in the middle is Ai-jen Poon, Ai-jen is the founder and executive director of the National Domestic Workers Alliance, the leading voice for America's low-wage workers who are predominantly women of color. She is a leader in the hashtag Families Belong Together and the hashtag MeToo movements, and advocates for worker pay and worker protections. Please, a round of applause to our wonderful panelists today. And let me take a moment to just quickly tell you a little bit about myself. I've been a journalist for the past 12 years. I've worked in the labor movement. I worked for SEIU California, or actually SEIU United Long-Term Care Workers before it became SEIU 2015, which is one of the largest SEIU locals that works with home care workers, mostly women of color, for the entire state of California. And so thank you. 2 years ago to date, actually, I had decided to go on a road trip. I had been a co-founder of a startup that after a few years decided to shut down, and I thought I'm going to travel the road and see why so many people want to vote for who is currently in office in the White House right now. So I went from Los Angeles to New Orleans, one of my favorite cities, and from there went up to Standing Rock, North Dakota, where I spent about 2 months in negative 14 degrees, where I was tear gassed and hit by a flash grenade. Had a friend that nearly lost her eye because she was hit by a rubber bullet in the face, all while wearing my press pass. And I thought and at the time, President Obama was in office. And I thought, this isn't the America that I want to see in the future. What can I do? And I didn't know. My congressman, Javier Becerra, was then tapped to be the new Attorney General for our state, opening up a congressional seat in my district. And I thought, if not now, when? And if not me, who? And I decided to run for Congress. And connected with Amy and so many of you here that helped me in that race. And while I was not successful in that race, what it did was set up a platform for me to run for the assembly seat. The assembly member of that area, of my area, won the seat, and I decided to hashtag persist and ran against 11 other men and won. So people ask, Wendy, why did you run for office? I said, well, I got mad. I got a clipboard, like President Obama said, I got a clipboard, collected some signatures, and decided to run for office. Won, and now I'm trying to figure out, I've been in office for 9 months. I had 3 of my bills now signed by the governor. And it's an incredible time for women. This is the lowest number of women the state of California has had in the state legislature. We've gone back in time. And so this is an opportunity for us to set up the bench. So not only on the federal level, which are critically important, but how are we running and setting up the bench so that when those seats do become available, or when we decide to challenge an incumbent that is no longer representing our community, do we have a base set up? And that's what we're trying to do. And I think that's why this conference, She the People, this summit is important, because the work that you're all doing is setting up the base for us to find and empower the next generation of Americans that will lead this country to ensure that it's one of justice, equity, and opportunity for everyone that calls this home, not just a few. As a formerly undocumented person, myself, who had access to residency and citizenship, this is what the American dream looks like. And we get to define it. And we get to say, this is a country for everyone, where the American dream is available to everyone, not just a certain few. And we get to define the future of this nation. So let's get started. Why don't we start with you, Ense, and tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing and how folks can get involved.
Yeah. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I am going to... let me first begin by begging your pardon if I sound like a cartoon villain. It's because I'm battling a cold, but I'm still going to tell y'all the story about the New South and what we're doing to change America. So I run an organization called the New Georgia Project. And in 2013, at the time, leader Stacey Abrams, we had been introduced by a mutual friend and we had brunch on New Year's Day. She said, I have this idea about how we are going to change the politics of the South and how we are going to sort of harness the energy of Georgia's changing demographics and begin to win for progressives and win and defend those wins beyond just one election cycle. And it starts with voter registration. And I was like, oh, that's adorable. That's cute. But you need to know that I'm from Georgia. Well, I was born in Nigeria, but was raised in Southwest Atlanta and had been a very precocious but very involved and really passionate activist in Democratic Party politics in the state since I was a kid. And so I think that a lot of people think about the South, you think that that it's been controlled by conservatives for a long time. And the truth of the matter is that it has, but they haven't always been Republicans. So Republicans didn't take control of Georgia's sort of political infrastructure until 1999, the year 2000. Before that, Democrats had controlled Georgia's government for 100 years. Now, they were Dixiecrats, but I point that out to say that what we're building with the New Georgia Project and what I suspect many of you are building is sort of movements and campaigns that supersede party labels, that really get at the issues, the priorities, the hopes and dreams of the communities that you serve. And again, regardless of party labels. And so, that's what we're doing with the New Georgia Project. So some highlights. Georgia's changing really, really, really rapidly. I like to say that the demographic changes that are happening in Georgia are happening quickly, and they are unique, and they're massive. 1.5 million people have moved into the state in the past decade. Over 80% of them are people of color. Political scientists, demographers are referring to it as the reversal of the Great Migration. So between the 1920s and the 1970s, Black Americans fled the American South and went to the Midwest and went to the coast, seeking economic opportunities, but also fleeing racialized oppression. And now folks are moving back to the South. I like to joke and say that we're full. Stop moving to Atlanta, y'all. But the truth of the matter is that it is because of these demographic shifts that this political moment is possible, that these policy opportunities are possible. And so we got to work. At the time, there were 1 million African Americans, Latinos, and Asian Americans in the state, and women, unmarried women, who were eligible to vote and unregistered. By the October 9th voter registration deadline for Georgia, this year we would have registered 300,000 of them, right? So, yeah. Super pumped about it. And so we've already cut into that. Why that becomes important is because when you start to look at top of the ticket races in Georgia, so Secretary Clinton lost in Georgia by 211,000 votes. Our Governor Deal won his re-election by 200,000 votes. Senator David Perdue won by 197,000 votes. So we've just registered 300,000 people of color, and with a plan to register the remainder. And it is fundamentally going to bring underrepresented, underserved communities of color to our democracy, to the table of democracy. And we're going to change the game. And I'm really excited about the New South to be a part of it, and how we're building independent political infrastructure for people of color, for women of color, for our families, and for our communities. That's right.
Hi, Jen. Well, I bring greetings from domestic workers around the country. Shout out to all the nannies and house cleaners and home care workers who are working in our homes, doing the work that makes everything else possible in our economy. It's critical work that holds everything up, and yet it's so undervalued and so vulnerable to abuse. And our organizing is changing all of that. We have been organizing in 30 states around the country. We have 90,000 members and growing, and we've been successful in passing domestic worker bills of rights in 8 states, including the great state of California. Shout out to the California Domestic Worker Coalition that continues to do incredible organizing here. And we're just getting started, and one of the things that I want to tell you about, which is super exciting, is really about our sister 501c4 organization called Care in Action, which is a new electoral arm of our movement that will be focused on building the political power of women of color. Yes, and we are really focusing our efforts in one particular state, the great state of Georgia, this year. You'll notice the theme here, and we have endorsed our very first candidate ever, the next governor of Georgia, Stacey Abrams. And it's just incredible, the energy, the momentum, the leadership, and I want to shout out the leadership of 2 Black women, Nikema Williams and Tamika Middleton, who are organizing and leading a canvas of 45 women who are all day, every day, knocking on doors, engaging voters of color in the state of Georgia. And you know what, y'all? We're gonna win. I mean, I feel it, right? We are going to win. And this is the momentum. This is the energy. Women of color, all up and down the ballot, in every single community, showing up, standing up, organizing, and building power. And what we talk about a lot in this work is this idea of whole person politics. That what women of color bring to the table is a refusal to silo our issues or our identities, to adhere or comply with some kind of a hierarchy of human value that forces us to choose between all the different issues that we care about, all of our values, right? We can bring the whole of who we are to the table, and that is the kind of politic that this country is hungry for. That is the reason why people are supporting the leadership of Black women, of trans women, of women of color, because we recognize that when we are able to see the world through an intersectional lens, through a lens that actually takes into account all the different ways that power is shaping our realities, right, and redefine power from a place of wholeness, that is actually what will bring us to the healthy multiracial democracy that we deserve in this country. And so we're really excited to be with you in this room to build this movement and make that future possible for all of us.
All right, let me see if my mic works. Can y'all hear me? Yes. Yeah? All right. Excellent. I bring greetings from Black and brown women in Florida who are kicking ass and taking names. And I have to give a shout out to my Mujeres Unidas y Activas sisters based here in the Bay Area who taught me everything I know about deep organizing. I moved home to South Florida because I really miss the café con leche and pastelitos. But in all seriousness, after the 2016 election, I decided it was time to focus and join the team that was organizing Black and Latino voters so that what happened in 2016 never happens again. And 2 years later, these are dark political times, but there are huge opportunities for us to make giant leaps forward everywhere. In Florida, Andrew Gillum has secured the nomination for governor of the state of Florida. And if 2018 is not the year that the Democratic establishment learns its lesson, it's the year that voters teach it to them. In Florida, Andrew Gillum secured the nomination. We secured the nomination by doing two things. One, he ran on an unapologetic people's platform. And two, he spoke to voters that are ignored. Yeah. He ran for everyone who's told that they don't belong. Yeah. And those lessons are critical not only for Florida, but for the nation and have implications for 2020 and beyond. Now, Republicans in Florida, while we swing in presidential years, make no mistake, Republicans have controlled the governing apparatus in Florida. They've had a trifecta for 20 years. They've controlled both houses of the state legislature and the governor's mansion, and they've done every vile thing that you can imagine. And they've won those statewide elections for governor by 1%. That's 66,000 votes in a state with over 20 million people. We know where those votes are. It's in people of color that stay home when the candidates don't excite them and don't meet their expectations. It's in young people that nobody's talking to. And we know that the new the new majority is here, and we exist to engage it. That there's a coalition of people of color and progressive white folks that can be built and win when people speak with a bold platform that we believe in and connect with our communities. New Florida Majority is an independent political organization that's building independent political power that centers Black and brown communities. We're led by women of color. And we believe that it's going to take rigorous field program, us engaging in like door-to-door, talking to folks, phone calls, texts, and using every ounce of our creativity, our poetic brilliance, our cultural excellence to reach people where they're at. The Statewide Alignment Group, which is another coalition that's led by a majority of women of color, yes, there's a theme here, We are dedicated to breaking the back of Jim Crow and advancing racial and economic justice in Florida. And we held a gubernatorial debate in June with over 800 of our members. And that night, New Florida Majority members said, they unanimously said, we are endorsing Andrew Gillum, and we're going to do everything it takes to get him elected. And we put together a campaign plan with Scotch tape and paper clips and the generous support of a few individuals in this room. And so we just went to, we knocked on over 50,000 doors. We texted over 200,000 people. We went up on radio across the state. We also used, we contracted a graffiti artist to do a mural with Andrew's face on it. We did karaoke nights, we did Wing It Home, we did Taco Tuesdays, we got a Colombian Chivas bus to roll through the streets of Hialeah. It paid off, but it's not over. The Republican candidate is running to basically be the Trump of the Sunshine State. His campaign ads were of his teaching his infant daughter how to build a wall, and Florida's a peninsula. But make no mistake, Republicans turned out 100,000 people more than Democrats did in the primary. This is going to be a hard-fought battle, and we can't understate what they're going to do to suppress the vote, to disenfranchise folks, to keep their control in this southern state. But we are so close. We are so close, and we know that we can do this, that we can take it home. Together with our allies, we're going to knock on close to 1 million doors. We're asking all of you all to support in any way that you can. We also have important down-ballot races and Amendment 4, which is a historic opportunity led by the returning citizens and the Florida Rights Restoration to give back the right to vote to 1.4 million Floridians that have been systematically disenfranchised. So thank you. This is our time. Women of color, for too long, our work is not seen or recognized. And this is, we are now leading the efforts to change what's possible. I believe it's going to be a landslide for Andrew. We're going to crush it on Amendment 4. And it's Black, Latina, Native, API women that are going to get us to the other side. Thank you.
And just as a time check, we have about 9 minutes left. Time goes by really fast hearing all of the incredible work that you're doing across the nation in states like Georgia, Florida, the entire country. California is in a different place since we have a Democratic majority. And what I've learned in the 9 months that I've been in office has been that not all Democrats are created equal. Facts. And so it's been a challenge. And so while the governor, to the work that you're doing, the governor just signed a bill that would allow incarcerated folks to be able to vote, and we know that the majority of folks are people of color, men of color, who are currently in prison. We are doing small steps moving forward, but it's a battle between Democrats who may not want to move things forward. And it's been really interesting to witness and try to figure out how do we do that. I think with the incredible work that you all do, there's also something we often don't talk about, and that is self-care. So how do we help the organizer? How do we heal the organizer to ensure that they continue to be well, to be able to do the work? And I'm sure that all of you have experienced some sort of fatigue, some sort of, why am I doing this? Is it worth it? So I'm wondering if you can share with us, all of you, some of the things that you do to do self-care and to not feel guilty about it. I love to dance. I dance in my room. I dance like no one's watching. And that's how I feel good about my life, just being a human being, being a woman. So I'm hoping that you can share what you do to make yourselves feel better. Feel good.
I just did it last night, so top of mind. I went to see my mentor, a woman named Linda Burnham, who's from the Bay Area, a Black woman, founder of the Women of Color Resource Center. She's been my mentor since I was 25. I'm so lucky. And I still go see her whenever I feel lost or tired or joyful or curious, anything. And it is so healing. I keep my mentors close, and I know y'all can relate to that. I see a lot of heads nodding.
Sure. I guess quickly what I would say is we need to bring joy and healing into the work and not see it as separate from the work. And I'm a mom first. Like, I put my kids first. I have boundaries and on, you know, spending time with them and with my family. And that keeps me grounded. And I think when the work is purposeful and meaningful, I think you find reserves of energy. When you have the ancestors at your back, you can do anything.
I take naps. I am the nap queen. I am the nap queen. You know, when it gets to be too much, I shut it down. I shut it down. So that's my thing. Also, I'm a huge rap nerd. And so I like live shows, and where I'm like way too old to be in this crowd, but like me and a crowd of teenagers, and we're all rocking out, and it's awesome. And normally, you know, because these aren't like super huge artists, like the shows are free. So yeah, yeah, those are the things that I enjoy. I also think that I try to maintain connections to like my family and friends and my community. I think that there are a lot of times where you can like retreat into your head and think that like you're the only one that's experiencing this, or you're messing up, or you know, whatever. We beat ourselves up, and it's just really incredible. And I think that getting outside of yourself, getting outside of your head, getting outside of your body, and maintaining the connections with people who rock with you, who love you, who've seen the ups and downs, is really, really important.
What about you? And we were just given the signal that we have about 5 minutes. We got to wrap it up. As I mentioned, I love to dance, and I also love to cook. So I like to be able to spend time in the kitchen and cook for friends and family. So that always makes me grounded whenever you can share a meal. And if you can't have the conversation, the hard conversation at home, how are you going to have it somewhere else? Lastly, I think it'd be really great if you can share a moment in your closing where you were challenged and you felt like you couldn't move forward, and what you did to change the internal feeling, because I'm sure we have all felt it. I'll tell you quickly mine. When I decided to run, I ran 2 special elections back to back. Traditionally, elections that take about 1.5 years, 2 years to do, I did each of them in about 4 months. That's special elections. I was told by a very powerful person, if you run twice and lose, your political career is over before you get started. And I thought, well, I had a career before, and I'll have a career after. And if the voters elect me, they'll elect me. And if they don't, then don't, and life will go on. And so I think what was meant to be a way to put me down, actually I took it as a way to, like, I'm going to challenge this person, and I'm going to win. And it was a hard conversation to have. And so I'm wondering if there have been moments in your careers, in the work that you do, where you've been challenged and how you overcame it.
I would say that for me, it's anti-Blackness in Latino communities is real. White supremacy and anti-Native sentiment in Latino communities is real. And so building Black-Brown unity is like, it's not an easy project. And I think for me, it's also, so I take that work really seriously, but also I think what's sometimes most challenging is like challenging that in my own family. And, you know, I think those have been some of the more difficult moments of, you know, how we push and how do we understand it as a long-term endeavor.
One of the things that comes to mind is just the ways in which women of color have big ideas and big aspirations and big dreams and are often told they're impossible. And I think that's true for the domestic workers, right? We're always told that our goals are not possible. And so a lot of what we've had to do is just keep expanding the realm of what's possible. And most recently, we had this vision for a new idea, a new solution to the care crisis in this country. I mean, it's ridiculous that we don't have any kind of support for child care or elder care in our families while we're all out there working. I mean, and having families. It's just a craziness in this country. And so we developed an idea called universal family care. The idea that we should all have access, we should all contribute to and have access to a fund to help us pay for child care, elder care, and paid family leave.
Amen.
And everywhere we went in Washington and in state legislatures, people said, impossible, will never happen. Politically unviable, non-viable, right? How many times have we heard those two words together? And I'll tell you what, we have an initiative on the ballot in the state of Maine for universal home care this year that voters will be voting on. Collected 70,000 signatures to get it on the ballot, and if it passes in November, the first state in the country where citizens will have universal access to home care for the aging population. So we just got to make it possible, and it's super hard.
I think one of the biggest challenges is, when we're working to live our values, and sort of doing this work is just really challenging, and knowing that we do this work in the tradition of a lot of our forefathers and foremothers, and trying to make sure that we have a truly multiracial, multi-generational movement. So, quick example, 2014, the first year we launched our large-scale civic engagement voter registration program. We registered 86,419 people of color throughout the state of Georgia. By the voter registration deadline, only 46,000 of them had shown up on the voter rolls. So 40,000 of them were missing. We went to the Secretary of State and said, bro, where are 40,000 applicants? And he looked back at us straight in our faces and said, what, 40,000 applicants? So we went to court, we sued, we lost. We lost because there's no law in Georgia that requires the state to process voter registration forms on a particular timeline. So it could take 30 days, it could take 60 days, it could take 90 days. And the judge said, maybe they'll show up by election day. Don't worry about it. So we lost. Needless to say, they did not show up by election day. 25,000 out of the 40,000 that we registered showed up 9 months after the election that we registered them for. I think the challenge there was that we did everything that we can to bring in sort of traditional civil rights veterans, the NAACP, et cetera, as well as working with sort of newer organizations. And when the rubber met the road and we lost in court, people looked at us like, well, maybe they did something wrong. Right? Like maybe it was them. It wasn't these conservative Republicans that are desperate to hold on to power because they know that Georgia's changing and we're coming for their seats. No, it was maybe that we had done something wrong. And so really, really recognizing that what we're doing is righteous. We're in a righteous fight, and that there are times where even people who are our allies and supposed to ride with us will look at us with skepticism because it gets too hot. But again, being super grounded and knowing that what we're doing is just and it's righteous and it's good and we're going to win. Yeah.
And that is our time. Please, everyone, help me thank our incredible panelists, Andrea Mercado, Ense Ufat, and IJ Poop. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Get on your feet. Get on your feet. Get on your feet. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, badass. Come on.
I feel like I'm supposed to do this.
Thank you. Okay, sound guys, turn on these mics. How you doing? Still, turn on the mics. This is a favor I want to ask you right now. If you look behind you, you'll see people who don't have a seat, and you have a seat next to you. And raise your hand if you got a seat next to you, and tell these women to come on down and find a seat, because you're going to want to strap in for the next two speakers. I want to take a moment while people are finding their seats. And by the way, those reserved sponsor seats, sit in those seats, please. Sit in those seats right here. Those of you who are standing in back. There's room for everyone here. Come on down. Okay. While we're doing this, I want to take a moment to I want to tell you something about the way that we got women from 36 states to get in this room. Because I just called for She the People in April. So it was a few months of organizing. I could not have done it with the over 60 organizational partners from all across the country, including New Georgia Project and Florida New Majority and the National Domestic Workers, the organizations that have networks of networks. And so there are 500 of us in this room, but thanks to our partners sharing the Facebook live stream and MoveOn sharing the live stream on YouTube, there's over 3.5 million people. So I want you to know that it's not just us. We're repping for millions. So take out your phone, and if you haven't yet, share the live stream from She the People's Facebook page or from MoveOn.org's page. Share it with your networks. I know who's in this room. There are powerful, powerful women in this room. If you haven't done so already, tweet, #SheThePeople18. Take a picture, meet somebody new, tell the story of a woman that you have met in this room, tell the story of an organization that's doing something amazing. I think we can get #SheThePeople18 to trend. What do you think? If every single one of us tweets and we do it consistently, we will. We will be seen and we will be heard. And if you haven't done so already, make a Facebook post or Instagram, whatever you do. If you're old like me, you do Facebook, but are you ready for what's coming next? Are you ready for what's coming next? It's my great honor to introduce two amazing speakers. They're going to go back to back. The first is a woman that I have personally admired and have watched grow from an activist organizer in her community in the state of New York to a national figure. She is the co-chair of the Women's March and a remarkable national voice. She was one of the first two people arrested at the Kavanaugh hearings last week, and founder of Empower, Linda Sarsour.
Appreciate you all. Thank you. How's everybody doing? So you already know me, I'm fired up. Every day I wake up fired up. And I thank you, Amy, for having me here today. I pray to God that they, postponed the Kavanaugh hearing while I was going to be here, which they did, and I'll be there on Monday. And I think something that Amy just said is really important, because I'm here because I said something at the Women's March in 2017. And I want you to remember what I said, because it was very important to me to say this, particularly because there was a lot of white women that came to the Women's March. I said, if you want to know if you are going the right way, follow women of color, because we know where justice is, because when we fight for justice, we fight for all people. I stand by that. And when we talk about even the Kavanaugh hearings, which is the most recent drama that we found ourselves in, it was me and Jennifer Epps Addison, a black woman, who were the first women to stand up courageously and boldly and declare that that was a mockery of justice that was happening in that hearing room. And I want to make some things clear, because I come here from Brooklyn. And if you know anything about Brooklyn and people born and raised in Brooklyn, it must be something in the water. Maybe it's the hospitals we're born at. I'm not exactly sure what it is. But we speak truth to power. We don't have filters. We're not out here to make people feel comfortable. We say it like it is. You take it, you don't take it, that's not on me. I hear a lot of people saying, black women save us, women of color out here saving us. No, let's just be really clear about what's happening. Black women are saving black people and black communities and marginalized people. Women of color were fighting for our people. And what happens when we fight for our people is that when black women are free and Native women are free and Latinas are free and Asian Americans are free and Palestinian women are free and Arab American women are free and trans women are free, then everybody's free. So that's what we're doing here. I'm not trying to save someone who has a lot more privilege than I have. When my people are saved, then we're all saved. So that's the first clarification that I'd like to make. What women of color also have a great understanding of a practicality is this idea of intersectionality. And I want to, because people are watching, let's just define it one more time, and let's be clear that this is a term given to us by a black woman named Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw. So let's be credit where it's due. Intersectionality is not about black women and white women organizing together, or black women and Asian women, or that's not what intersectionality is. So if that's what you think it is, delete. I'm about to give you the definition. Intersectionality is this idea, this tangible opportunity for us to organize across oppression. The idea that you can't combat anti-black racism without also combating xenophobia and misogyny and sexism and anti-Semitism and Islamophobia and transphobia and homophobia. That you can't just fight against one branch on the larger tree of racism. That we have to understand that we are whole people. I am a woman and a woman of color. I am a Muslim woman. I'm also a daughter of immigrants. I live in an urban city. I come as a whole person. I'm a mom. So when we ask people to show up in a space and leave a part of them out because it makes somebody else feel uncomfortable, that is not intersectionality. So they said, Linda, you're really divisive because you always want to talk about race. You're a race baiter. And a New York Times reporter asked me this about a few weeks before the Women's March of 2017. They said, look, we're looking at your Facebook page and it feels like there's some people who are really uncomfortable because y'all keep talking about black women and race stuff. Is that by accident? I said, I don't do anything by accident. I said, this idea of being able to talk about women's issue through a racial justice lens is by design. Because that's the reason why we're in this situation right now. So I want everyone here to understand and listen to me very carefully. We women of color are brilliant. And we are strategic. And we know exactly what we want. And we also know what needs to happen. And we're doing it. We are the boldest and the bravest in this movement. I can take you to 50 states. Let's go to the front lines of the environmental justice movement, the immigrant rights movement, racial justice, anti-police brutality. Guess what? Women and women of color at the front lines of every movement in these United States of America. And this ain't new because they also want to erase the history and the lineages that we come from because women always been at the front lines. Just because the story hasn't been told that way doesn't mean it didn't happen. But you know what? We got social media now. So now we tell our own stories, and we're archiving our stories. But I'll just say this. Women of color are closest to the pain, which makes us closest to the solutions. And people just got to come to terms and give us this opportunity to lead in this moment. What's the worst that's going to happen? How much worse can it get? So my love letter to women of color is this. Show up, all of you. All outrageous and angry, all of you, right? I want you to be very black and very Latina and very Asian and very trans and very Muslim and very refugee and very everything that you are. I want you to be very radical. I want you to be very progressive. Don't let anybody tell you don't be too progressive because you know what? When I was talking about Medicare for all 5 years ago, they were like, you're politically naive. You have no idea what you're talking about. You're bringing the socialism stuff out here. All of a sudden, 5 years later, everybody's running on Medicare for all. So whatever I say now is going to be mainstream in 5 years, just so you know. I want you to know, women of color, that you are enough. And we need all of you right now. And this country needs all of you right now. Don't ever be less of who you are to make anybody feel comfortable. And you know what? if somebody wants to stop us from what we're doing to talk about how their feelings and talk about how uncomfortable they are, they just really need to get out of the way, because we got some work to do right now. And maybe, just maybe, the over 51% of white women who continue to vote against their and our interests might get in line this time. But I'm not waiting for them, because we are the majority, and we're winning races across this country, and we're organizing, and we're mobilizing, and we're organizing the largest single-day demonstrations in American history. And we're going to stop Kavanaugh from getting on the Supreme Court. So I'm not waiting, but the doors are wide open. Everybody's welcome to our movement. So I say to you, my sisters, we are all we got. You are all I got. You give me inspiration. I am unbought and unbossed, and I'm unafraid. And I say to all of you, stay unapologetic, because she the people and we the people. Thank you very much. That's right. We got this. Speaking of unbought and unbossed is my next speaker. I've been around for a long time, but not everybody knew who I was, which is fine. Actually, I liked it that way better. But that's, too deep in right now. One of the first people to inspire me to be the person that I am today is our next speaker. As a young Palestinian Muslim American woman born and raised in Brooklyn, I saw another Palestinian Muslim American woman born and raised in Detroit, in the D. She is unbought, unbossed. She says it and tells it like it is. She is one of the boldest, most bravest women I have ever met in my entire life. She is a mom. She inspires me every day. And she has allowed me to go and tell my daughters that we made history together. And now we have not one, but two. Daily Kos reminded me of an interview that I did 7 years ago, where I said that we will have very soon women who look like me and are from my communities go into Congress. And here I told you, I'm telling you what I say happens. I'm just saying. I'm telling you, just gotta listen to what I gotta say. Now we have not one, but two Muslim American women going to Congress. And this next speaker is just a little extra luckier, because God also chose for her to be Palestinian. So we're lucky. I don't know what to tell you. Please give it up for our next Congresswoman from the great state of Michigan, Rashida Tlaib.
I said this last night, but I love being in the room like this. I think people just think, like, folks that run for office, like, oh, this, that we don't need this. But we do, Amy. And we are probably going to need it even more when we're there in Congress, when Alexandria and I and Alhan and Johanna and Ayana. I love that we have these amazing names that we're going to Congress. Yeah, you're going to have to learn how to say our names. I am Rashida Tlaib, and I grew up in the blackest city in the country. And I grew up with teachers that told me about communities where they couldn't live, about lines they couldn't get in line in, and that jobs they couldn't get because of the color of their skin. And it was the roots. Those are the roots. Those teachers, those mentors are in me. As a Palestinian brown girl from Southwest Detroit, where I grew up with 20 different ethnicities. That is the beauty of this country, what it can be. And you all know this. Like, it's not even about, like, where we got to go back. I said, no, it's about a new kind of living in this country, where my son doesn't have to hide who he is. As a mom, something's different when you got someone that's bullying people and saying things. You get so much more focused. It sometimes isn't even about white or black or any of that. It's really about being protective and about making sure that people are not hurt and not feeling less than. And this is what it's about. And so I gotta tell you, you know, when I saw the numbers come in, people looked at the primary election and like, oh, this is gonna be, it was so close. And I won by like 900 votes. Like, people don't realize we made history with 900 votes. And I can tell you, even, I know Mahima's here. Where's Mahima? Mahima's here, who helped run my field operation, who is amazing. Thank you. I love you so much. You know, I didn't know you were here until I saw you on social media. So she's now hiding from me because I think she's afraid I'm going to make her, let's go do more doors. But I got to tell you, we expected 50,000 people to come out. 89,000 people came out to vote. And I am absolutely blown away by that fact. But to see my mother's face the night of, that she didn't come here because of better opportunity. She fell in love with a man who was 19 when he came here, right? But for her, who only went up to 8th grade education, to see her daughter become a member of Congress, but also somebody, by the way, she thinks I'm about to liberate Palestine. I keep explaining to her. But that's what it is. But what I love is my mother who goes, you know, Mama, just stay away from him. And I said, Mama, it's okay. We're not there. We're here. I'm allowed to ask him questions. I'm allowed to hold him accountable. Don't worry. She's like, but let Allah take care of him. And I said, Mom, God will take care of me. She does. She says it to me all the time because that's the mom that she is. She wants to be protective, right? But I got to tell you, just watching my son, who's up until 5 in the morning watching this as a 13-year-old, he now knows a bully can't win. But he also knows that if you work hard enough, if you get out there, and that direct human contact can change lives. It can completely change the direction of our movement and so many things. But I love the fact that we're here getting together because this is what they're afraid of. Like, they don't want us talking to each other. They don't want us to say the things that we're saying today. And I got to tell you, but it's needed because it can't just be us members of Congress, these beautiful young rainbow, beautiful young women coming to Congress, but it's going to be this movement that is going to be behind us, in front of us, actually. You all are in front of us. And we have to follow your lead. We have to be supporting this kind of movement work. I mean, I'll leave you with this. You know, after I won, people finally said things, you know, people said, you know, Rashida, I just feel like I belong now. And I was like, but we already belonged. She goes, no, it's different, right? It's different. Because feeling this sense of rejection or less human and this continued dehumanization, people don't realize what it does to your soul. And now we have showed the power. We're not going to sit on the sidelines. We're going to run for office. In 40 years, we've never seen this many women going to Congress, and we haven't even gotten to November general election. So as we move forward, as we, you know, I keep telling people always go to these little hashtag pink wave, blue wave. Amy, they got all kinds of, I was like, forget the waves. We got to own the ocean, people. We're going to own the ocean. Just remember that. Fight for that, because when we own the ocean, we own it all. Like, they're not gonna, I don't care about waves, they come and go. But we got to be the ones moving things along, getting things done. And I gotta tell you, women of color, we have a lens that is so beautiful and so unique. And I remember going door to door in Flint, giving out water, and meeting a Guatemalan mother who said to me, don't worry, I'm boiling my water. I said, no. I was like, you don't boil your water. It's not Guatemala. Like, there's lead in it. It gets worse. And she looked at me and she said, but I've been nursing my child. Do you know what I'm saying? We can't even get clean water for our children, our predominantly African American and brown and all these different colors, because our lens is not at the table. So you all better run for office, because I'm not doing this alone. Thank you so much. One more time, give it up. Rashida and Linda.
And she said, this is not a blue wave. This is not a pink wave. We are the ocean. It is time for us, she the people, to rise, rise, rise. Right now, we are going to take a 10-minute break because they just lit it on fire. We're going to take a 10-minute break. We want to encourage you to mix and mingle, get to know who's in the room. Feel free to go downstairs, get some fresh air, get something to drink. Don't forget to share your experience today. Hashtag SheThePeople18. Take pictures and selfies. Share it with the world. And we want you to come back in 10 minutes because our next speaker is the incomparable Dolores Huerta. And you will not want to miss any of that. So with that, 10 minutes, and we'll see you back here. Thank you.
Remember Marilyn calling me audibly.
Microphone check. Microphone check 1, check 2, check 3. Mic check 1, check 2, check 3. She the people in the place to be. I hate to break up the party, but please make your way back to your seats. All right, we're going to have a contest. Everyone hustle back to your seats. The last one seated is it. Okay, I'm going to give us the countdown. We're going to get this show started in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, y 1. Right now, we are going to have a video message from Ayanna Presley from Massachusetts.
She the people. My name is Ayanna Presley. I'm the Democratic nominee for the Massachusetts 7th Congressional District. I am so disappointed personally that I can't join you today for this historic inaugural convening, She the People, celebrating the collective we and the power of she. I'm going to tell you ladies, like I tell the young girls every day, it is so critically important that we know our worth, that we see our beauty, that we stand in our power, and we never, ever, ever apologize for being authentically ourselves. Each and every one of you is leading, inspiring, and building a movement, ushering in a new paradigm of how we do business in government. So all I can say is continue to be bold, continue to be fierce, and go on with your best self.
So my name is Rosie Torres, and I serve on the Oakland Unified School District School Board. I'm a school board trustee. I'm in my second term, and I'm very excited to be able to introduce this next speaker who has been inspiring millions for generations, for decades. I know I've been inspired over the time when running for office. It's very hard and difficult. She is a woman that has been referred to as, get this, a bright star in the constellation of the meaning of life. She is the founder and president of Dolores Huerta Foundation. And more importantly, in Oakland Unified School District, our students at Met West High School named the honorary Dolores Huerta Hall after this amazing icon. So please welcome Dolores Huerta.
Thank you very much, Rosie, and I want to thank all of you for being here. This is what the future looks like. Whoa! You know, Coretta Scott King once said that we will never have peace in the world until women take power. But I have to amend that statement to say we will never have peace in the world until feminists take power. And we know that there's a difference in that because we know that feminists will stand up for immigrants' rights, for environmental rights, for women's reproductive rights, for our environment, and for labor rights. So this is what a feminist looks like. I am on the board of the Feminist Majority, just to let you all know that. But when I say that, women need to take power, and we need to take that power at every step of the way. You know, we're all invested now in fighting very hard for our congressional races, for our Senate races, for legislative races. But let's bring it down to the school board level, okay? And I'll tell you why that's important, because as women of color, we have to fight for the generations of our students. We know that unfortunately, the contributions of people of color to the building of our United States of America is not taught in our schools. And unless we can get that in there to teach that Native Americans were the first slaves, African slaves built the White House and the Congress, people from Mexico, Mexicans are great, by the way, okay? That, you know, they till the fields and they build the railroads, and to this day, we know that our immigrants are toiling there every day to keep our country great. So, but we have to teach this in our schools so that our children of color, our young women of color, will have the kind of pride that they deserve and the respect that they deserve. But it's not going to happen unless we go out there and fight for it. And we need to end the racism in our society so that our Anglo children will not have that poison of white privilege and white supremacy. So we need to teach that. So I just say to you, as we are here with She the People, think of how we're going to take that power, how we're going to go out there. We're going to make sure not only that we focus on congressional races and state races, but that we're also going to focus on school board races, water board races, okay? All of these other places where women's voices need to be there. And we know this for certainty, that if we see anywhere that there is a meeting and we see the people that are going to be making decisions about policy, how they're going to spend our tax dollars, and if there are not any feminists at that table, we know that they're going to make the wrong decision, right? So, and that means that we have a huge responsibility, and we have to go out to our sisters that are not involved. And I want to quote Helen Keller, who said this, and I'm not going to say this exactly, but she said, "Science has not been able to find the cure for the greatest evil of all. That evil is apathy." And we know that we have many sisters that are still not enlightened, that are still not realizing that we need their voices in this struggle for justice for the United States of America. So we've got to think about being organizers, recruiting other women. Women, you have the strength, you have the enlightenment, but please remember, we have so many sisters out there that are still not with us, that they are still facing domination. They don't know how to get out of this. They have inhibitions. They have their own self-doubts. And we've got to help them erase those self-doubts so that they can realize that they have power and that we need their voices. And we are waiting for them to join us. We know that right now we have this big crisis on the Supreme Court. So how do we do this? How do we stop this? So for those sisters that are from the states where you can really influence your senators, you know, we're so lucky in California because we have Dianne Feinstein, you know, and we have Kamala Harris. But if you're from these other states, you know, set up some phone banks. Start calling people and say, please do not confirm Judge Kavanaugh for the Supreme Court of the United States of America. We can do this. We can stop it. But it's going to take a lot of work to do this. You know, I saw Michael Moore, and he is a feminist, on Broadway. And he said we have to do 3 things. When we wake up in the morning, what do? You know, we wash our face, we brush our teeth, and now we have to call our senators. Okay? We have to call our senators. So I think that we have the power to do this, and I'm calling on all of you to make this happen. We know that there is so much resting on this confirmation, not only women's right to abortion, women's reproductive rights. We have gay rights. We have labor rights. We have voting rights. Because Judge Kavanaugh, when he was on another court, he was actually part of a decision that deprived over 80,000 people in South Carolina from voting, people of color. So, you know, let's join the sisters that have been out there in the front of creating this great movement that we now have of women as leaders. Let's join them. Let's organize. Let's make our movement bigger. We know that we can make it happen. So I'm going to ask all a question, and I know you know the answer. And the question is a very simple one. Oh, and before I say that, just let me say this. There was a movie made about my work with the Farm Workers Union, and please always honor the people that work with their hands, okay? The farm workers, the hotel workers, all these people that do the heavy lifting for us. And I just want to promote the movie. It's called Dolores, after my name, produced by Carlos Santana, and it's available at our foundation, the Dolores Huerta Foundation, and you can reach us on our website, doloreshuerta.org. Okay, now comes the question that I'm going to ask you, and as I said, I know you know the answer. And the question is very simple. I'm going to ask you, who's got the power? Okay, don't answer yet. So I want you to shout out very, very loud, we've got the power. And when I ask what kind of power, I want you to say feminist power. All right, can we do that? But we have to shout this so loud so all of the misogynists, the homophobes, the racists, okay, all of those people, all the haters out there, so that they can hear, our voices, and so that they know that we are present. And we're going to erase the apathy. We're going to erase the apathy that we have in our society, because unfortunately, we know that in the last election, more people didn't vote that voted. So that means that we've got to get out there, we've got to put on our sneakers, we've got to go out there, knock on doors, we've got to do the phone banking, we've got to do the heavy lifting to make sure that we can create a just society, especially for women in our United States of America. Okay, so here goes the question, all right? Okay, here goes the question, okay? Who's got the power? I think some people aren't sure. So let's do it one more time, okay? I know it's close to lunch, people are probably hungry, but I think we can make this happen. Very, very loud as you can. Remember, when you have an education, your voice gets louder, not softer. Louder, not softer. Okay, let's go. Who's got the power? We got the power! What kind of power? Feminist power! All right, are we going to go out there and campaign, organize, mobilize, get people to come out there and vote? What do we say? ¿Se puede? Sí se puede! Okay, let's all do it with an organized hand clap. Everybody together, let's go. Sí se puede! Sí se puede, sí se puede, sí se puede, sí se puede. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. Let's go win. Let's go win. Thank you.
New American Leaders is leading a movement for inclusive democracy by preparing first and second generation Americans to use their power and potential in elected office. Please welcome founder and president of New American Leaders and author of the recently published People Like Us, the new wave of candidates knocking at democracy's door, Siyou Bashwani.
I'm no Dolores Huerta, but I wrote a book, so I knew that we were going to have a new wave of candidates knocking at democracy's door. It's a book that's actually going to get published in a couple of weeks, and you can get a copy in advance if you come downstairs at 3 o'clock and you have a very, very clever tweet with the hashtag People Like Us. So I have 25 advance copies to give you. It's really not fair to be given 3 minutes to speak after Dolores Huerta, and I thought, I'm going to screw this up. And I sort of did something right by writing a book a while ago, so I'll just read a portion of it. But I want to preface this short reading by saying that, you know, this morning we invoked our ancestors and talked about the shoulders of people we stand on. And in reading from this book, I want to invoke actually names of women who have run and won in recent years, even before we saw this incredible surge of women candidates. Women who ran in 2015 and 2016 and who won by being their true, authentic selves, by lifting up their immigrant stories as part of the American narrative. Because you know what, we are part of the American narrative. There's not an immigrant story and an American story. There's an American story that includes the immigrant narrative, that includes the narrative of the First Peoples, that includes the narrative of enslaved peoples who were forced to migrate here. And so there's no reason to talk about our American journey without talking about where we come from, where our families come from. These women also ran by understanding that they needed to expand the electorate, that they needed to reach voters who had never before been talked to. And they also ran by understanding that while money wields power, work, knocking at doors, asking people to be part of the democratic process is way more powerful and long-lasting. Because we all know that we can spend money very quickly, but we can't lose goodwill that quickly. We have the goodwill and the support of voters. And so I want to share with you a couple of paragraphs from the book, which really is a way of saying that the democracy that we currently live in is not a democracy that was designed for the people like us in this room. It was not designed to work for us. So when you all are encountering these systems, it's not about you, it's about the fact that it was never, 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 ever meant to work for us. Because who designed this democracy? Who signed the original founding documents? Not anybody who look like anyone in this room, right? And so it makes sense that our democracy is not working because it wasn't supposed to work. And in my book, I talk about how we can reshape democracy so that it works for she the people. And it works in ways that don't require us to constantly be beating our heads against a wall, to constantly be fighting obstacles, so that if more of us are in power, more of us can shape the democracy that we want for the people like us. Carmen and Raquel benefited from redistricting and the political momentum it created in their communities. Raquel is here today. She's a city council member in Detroit. Carmen Mendez is a city council member in Yakima, Washington. They both answered a call to service and won their elections because of determination and dedication. But they were also elected because of the hunger that Americans around the country have for new voices in government, regardless of ethnicity. Neither woman was elected solely because she's Latina or by virtue of just the Latinx vote, given the demographics of their respective districts. Gender and ethnicity were factors in their campaign, just as they are factors in their legislative activities. But voters elected them, as they have many women this year, because they saw in them the promise and potential that they would deliver the kind of government that the country is longing for. They are first, but they will need to be followed by many more. Since Trump's election, Carmen has received emails that question her ability to serve, asking, quote, "Are you legal? Are you even allowed to be on council?" Other women also attack her for her appearance with statements like, quote, "Stop playing dress up and get to work." She describes these encounters as being discouraging initially, but ultimately motivating. I think we're all familiar with that. There's always going to be an issue, she says. We are the issue because we have power and we're raising the issues that affect our community. Raquel shared a similar sentiment when reflecting on her 2017 re-election campaign. "I'm a brown, short woman who is educated, unmarried, and still lives in her ghetto childhood house." I think that was Raquel. "And I'm elected. My existence causes trouble." So let's go out there, people, and make our existence cause trouble every day, every minute. Thank you.
Media personality, civil rights activist, and executive producer of a podcast that examines news, politics, entertainment, and pop culture through a social justice lens. She's the first trans woman to become editor-in-chief of a national publication. Give it up and welcome Ashley Marie Preston.
Thank you all so much for sharing this space with me. It's a really beautiful gesture for She the People to be intentional about including the voices of trans women and including the voices of people that typically aren't a part of catch-all advocacy, because catch-all advocacy doesn't catch us all, and many of us fall through the cracks. And in many spaces, I'm in a lot of spaces that are predominantly white, and I see a lot of things that we do as women of color in those spaces, and I can't call it out because I'm from Kentucky, where you don't put family on blast in front of company. You wait until company has gone home for the evening, and then you get down to business. So right now, we're going to get down to business. So I also became the first trans person to run for California State Legislature. Don't clap just yet. So what I realized is that we have a very narrow understanding of what intersectionality is in its fullness. What if I told you that intersectionality was more nuanced than race and gender? When I went to run for office, what I found was that people were excited about women running for office. People were excited about women of color running for office. But when it came to the trans thing, yeah, we're kind of getting there, but right now these people are more important. People came and told me that you're a little young, so maybe you should just wait maybe 10 or 15 more years. People gave me advice like, maybe you should, I don't know, cover your tattoos, and to which my reply was absolutely not. People told me that maybe you should hold back on the stories about you being homeless, and the stories about you being a survival sex worker, and the stories about you having to navigate mental health, and the stories about you being addicted to drugs. And I also push back against that because my life experiences are not something that I should be apologetic about, and they inform my leadership. So when we talk about She the People, we need to get very specific about what people we're talking about. She the sex worker, she the homeless, she the incarcerated, she the immigrant, she the disabled, she who's trying to get her children back, she who is trying her hardest to get a job with the background and past that she has. But she is still the future. And so what I challenge us all to do is to step our feminism up, to expand our scope of intersectionality, to include the people that everybody tends to erase. I'm often reminded of a quote by Audre Lorde in which she says, "I am not free while any woman is unfree, even though her shackles be very different from my own." And it's one of my favorite because it reminds me that we are of a collective palate, and not a single one of us will taste liberation until we all do. Intersectionality has to exist in every single space that women occupy. Intersectionality needs to exist in our faith-based community. Intersectionality needs to exist in our institutions of learning. Intersectionality needs to exist in corporate culture. It should exist in entertainment. But the most important part and place that intersectionality should exist is within our hearts. When we're running around trying to raise funds for campaigns, I think that that's a huge part of politics. But what are you willing to do for the people that can't finance that campaign? We're all knocking on the doors of all the rich folks. We're all knocking on the doors of the people that we want to add to our social capital. But are you going to knock on doors of the jail? Are you going to the boulevard and the streets and the homeless shelters and the places where people need to be represented and advocated for the most? Because you may not see value in those people who can't finance your campaign, but what I can guarantee you is that your fiercest workers are the ones who have absolutely nothing to lose but life itself. So in 2018, I'm proud to live in a country where a porn star was the one that got Michael Cohen to plead guilty to bank fraud, tax fraud, campaign finance fraud, and which led to this snowball effect that's leading toward the Russia probe. We need to revisit women's place in politics. We have to stop promulgating respectability politics put into place by people who don't respect us. We are bigger than that. We are bolder than that. We are more courageous than that. We are more multifaceted than that. And so I know this is a space in which we're celebrating one another, we're uplifting one another, but at the same time, it's an opportunity for us to go within and really interrogate our intentions. What is it that we want to bring to these communities? Because if we're not careful, we are going to become a microcosm of the thing that we're trying to dismantle at the macro. So I just thank you so much. My time is up, but I'm really grateful to be here. I'm really grateful to expand the conversation further. And I challenge everyone to revisit what your idea of being a woman is and who is included in that definition. And I challenge you to also allow yourself to get uncomfortable. It's going to get uncomfortable, but that's where growth takes place. And I think that in 2018, not only are we willing to grow, but we're willing to do whatever it takes to move America forward. So I thank you all for your contributions and what you're doing to make that happen.
One more time for Ashley Marie Preston. So I think we are approaching the 3 million mark of folks who are seeing us out in the interwebs. So I want to encourage us to continue sharing your experiences here in this room. Hashtag #SheThePeople18. And now it is my pleasure to introduce, representing Arizona's 27th district. She is both the first woman and the first Latina to serve as House Minority Leader in Arizona's State House. Please help me in welcoming Representative Rebecca Rios.
Thank you. My God, it is wonderful to be here at She the People Summit, and I still can't get over what a phenomenal name that is. My name is Rebecca Rios, and I am proud to lead the House Democratic Caucus in Arizona. Now, people will say Arizona, and I will say, yes, Arizona. You don't hear a lot of good news coming out of Arizona. Unfortunately, we remain a state where it is exceedingly difficult for women, certainly when it comes to our reproductive rights. But I am thrilled to be able to talk to you about one of the most exhilarating and inspiring legislative sessions that I've ever been a part of, and one whose highlights were largely female-led. Before the good stuff, we had a difficult start. We actually voted to expel a member for sexual harassment. It was a powerful moment and a near unanimous vote. That lawmaker's name was Don Shooter, and as you can imagine, he is a retrograde throwback to an era where women exist for his amusement, to be objectified and belittled, and where the chances of getting his support on a bill depended on how attractive your lobbyist was. He blamed everyone but himself on the way out the door, and as you might also imagine, he didn't take the hint, and he ran again for the seat. He came in last place. That restored my faith in the electorate, which at times I will admit wavers. But I don't know if you're seeing it where you live, but there is an energy in Arizona that is real. In our recent primary election on August 28th, we saw record turnout, and it was being driven by younger female voters. Right after that primary, we laid to rest our senior Senator, John McCain. And as we were waiting to view his casket lying in state at the Capitol, there were a group of female lawmakers from both parties that were sharing stories from the campaign trail. Like me, each of these women talked about energized women voters that they had met who told them, I just went down the ballot and voted for every woman I could find. Now, of course, we'd like voters to be a little more discerning than that, but I'll take it. One of the most diverse and talented group of lawmakers and candidates is on the ballot in Arizona, one of the most diverse I've ever seen in my state. In fact, so diverse that it was enough to trigger a prominent conservative male newspaper columnist to wonder if white males still have a place in the Democratic Party. Let me just say, thanks for the concern, but it's not true. I have many, many terrific white male colleagues, and they are well represented on our ticket, and they are certainly overrepresented on the other side of the aisle. But let me just say that even if it were true, 1776 to 2018 is a pretty good run, don't you think? So about our amazing legislative session. We started with something rare, Republicans reaching across the aisle for Democratic votes on a plan to combat the opioid epidemic. I was able to negotiate $10 million for treatment, adding real money to the plan that would make a real impact. Everybody won. The governor's office, Republicans, Democrats, and the public and the media applauded us. So of course they refused to negotiate with us again. However, when they wouldn't work with us, we went over and we went around them. One of our incredible up-and-coming members, and she is in the audience today, I didn't realize she was going to be here, Representative Athena Salmon. Representative Salmon proposed a bill to address the inhumane treatment of female inmates in the Arizona prison system. For years, female inmates could get no more than 12 feminine napkins a month. 12. Imagine that. Her bill was being held up by a male Republican committee chairman. That's when Representative Salmon and local activists sparked a grassroots online response that we called #LetItFlow. Women from around the state and eventually around the country began mailing tampons and pads to lawmakers. It attracted nationwide news coverage, and about the time that CNN tweeted it to their 47 million followers, the Republicans were saying, make it stop, make it stop. Our governor, Doug Ducey, tripled the number of pads that female inmates could get. But more importantly, because of Representative Salmon, we restored some basic human dignity to incarcerated women as they pay their debt to society. And finally, some of you may have seen coverage of this, but the teachers and public school supporters in Arizona have finally had enough. Enough with the chronic defunding of education and enough with the disrespect of our educators. Thousands of educators walked out and swarmed our Capitol. The Red for Ed movement was not only one of the most inspiring, but also the smartest and best organized grassroots political movements I have ever seen. And why wouldn't it be? They were teachers, and they were also 3/4 women. The energy of our teachers and an awakened public moved Republicans from a proposed 1% raise to a 10% raise. But in Arizona, we know that's not enough. Our schools are still $1 billion short of where they were before the recession, and the governor refused to consider new revenue to actually pay for the raise. So Red for Ed is still out there working, taking on anti-education lawmakers, and many of those teachers are now running for office. And so let me just say that if you want to see She the People in action, watch out for Arizona in November. Thank you.
Groundswell Fund and Groundswell Action Fund are rapidly approaching the $50 million mark of resources moved to grassroots organizing and primarily women of color. Today, Groundswell funds more reproductive justice organizations annually than any other foundation. Please welcome to the stage the founder and executive director of Groundswell Fund and Groundswell Action Fund, Vanessa Daniel.
Y'all are a beautiful sight, you know. When I was a little girl, one of my favorite people in the planet was my grandfather, Papa. And there's a story that sticks with me about when Papa was a young man. He was working as a chauffeur for a British tea plantation owner in Sri Lanka. And that owner used to like to get drunk and make Papa give him the keys to the car and say, move over to the passenger seat. And because he wanted to drive, and he would careen all over these little country roads, running into ditches and over embankments. Papa would come home sometimes with scrapes and bruises on his body. But he would patch himself up and he would go to work the next day because he needed that job to feed his family. Well, this is a metaphor for America. Because in America, we have a certain brand of white male leadership that has been driving us into every conceivable ditch, from climate change to massive wealth inequality to the largest prison population on the planet. And the thing about it is they aren't just driving us into ditches anymore. They are headed for a cliff from which human life on the planet may not survive. So I don't know about you all, but when I look at the face of my 7-year-old daughter and I look at the courage in this room, I am very clear that we are part of a generation that is done sitting in the passenger seat. We are done patching up our cuts and bruises, and we are done postponing our freedom. We are going to take the keys. And we know when women of color take the keys, we drive not just ourselves to freedom, we drive this whole country and everybody in it to freedom. And I want to talk about one area where we need to grab the keys, and that is in the realm of electoral money. Because the majority of large electoral money is controlled by people who actually want to keep us in the passenger seat. And we know how dangerous it is to put that much power in a passive position. How many of you all know what it feels like to be treated and seen as bodies to be moved to the ballot box to vote for candidates that you were never invited to help select? How many of you all know what it feels like to be invited to give testimony at the state legislature on bills that you are never invited to help author? So we all lose out when women of color are put in the passenger seat. Women of color, and I want to say black women in particular, who are the founders of Me Too and Black Lives Matter, two of the most important movements of our time. Women of color who we see come out at the ballot box and stand against hate more than any other demographic group consistently from coast to coast of this country. Women of color are the MVP of social change, and electoral dollars need to stop trying to put us on the bench and then have the audacity to wonder why the scoreboard looks like it does on every issue that progressives claim to care about, from climate change to economic justice to immigrant rights. So we haven't controlled the money, but I want to pose a question to you all. What if we did? What if there was a place that donors could put their money where the people who controlled where that money went on the ground were some of the baddest women of color freedom fighters in our country today? I'm talking about sisters who are to 2018 what Angela Davis and what Sylvia Rivera and Fannie Lou Hamer were to 1969. What if these sisters were in charge? And what if they were doing that through a foundation that was founded and run by women of color who come out of grassroots organizing in our communities? And what if that foundation understood how tired communities of color are as being treated as sites of extraction for our cheap labor, for oil, for uranium, and for our votes by people who don't care about us? And who said, you know, we are going to support the best and brightest women of color C4 organizations across the country and treat them and the communities that they support like partners in the long-range work of building power and self-determination for our communities and changing our material conditions. So one thing I know about women of color is we know how to turn a what if into reality. And we did that last year when we launched Groundswell Action Fund, which is all of these things that I described, and now the largest fund in the country that is centering women of color C4 work. So if you all are interested in putting women of color in the driver's seat of electoral funding in this country, see us, lift us, fund us. You can look on Facebook on our page to make a donation. Let's take back those keys.
Hello, take back the keys, and I will say, as a Groundswell Action Fund board member, I wholeheartedly agree that we need to take back the keys. Thank you, Vanessa. So my name's Nicole Boucher. I'm the co-executive director of the California Donor Table. Thank you. Give some love to my co-executive director over there, Ludovic Blaine, Tigress, Irene, and the donor table members in this room that know that California is in better hands when our new majority communities have what they need to elect good candidates, pass good policies, and govern and help hold them accountable. Simple, right? That's why we're here. We're here to reshape the playing field because we know that when communities of color lead, they come for everybody. This is a no-brainer. This is a no-brainer for me, but why are we having such a hard time figuring this out in this country? You know, and the thing is, women of color have a history of being told that we don't have what it takes to run things. We're not smart enough. We're not capable enough. But, you know, all of these white men that are running our Senate do, right? It has nothing to do with racism and misogyny. It has to do with intelligence and capability. Well, let me tell you, our legacy of resilience and brilliance from our great-grandmothers, our godmothers, our aunties, to us as individuals, no otherwise. So I'll tell you a little story about myself. 25 years ago, I was housing insecure. I had barely graduated high school. I had zero path to anything. And I found myself in a tiny town in Texas working at a catfish diner, making $2.13 an hour. Because my livelihood depended on those tips, me and the women that I worked with, we had to be very smart, very strategic, work with difficult people, relate to people we have nothing to common with, and work very, very hard to make ends meet, as my sisters from Rock in this room will tell you right now. Thank you, my Rock sisters right there, thank you. So imagine for a moment that our senators were as brilliant and as resilient as our Rock sisters over there. So to illustrate that, I'm going to take you on a trip. I'm going to talk about California, but right now we're going to take a trip to Kentucky. We're at the Cracker Barrel. Mitch McConnell is waiting tables at the Cracker Barrel, okay? And let's put him in a really uncomfortable, doily, starchy outfit, right? Because we want him to be hot and sweaty, and y'all know how those table waiting outfits go, right? Mitch, he's been on his feet for 12 hours. He's at the end of his shift, and in walks the Harris family. I'm talking Kamala, Maya, Mina, Tony. They sit in his section. And he goes, man, I cannot stand that family. Oh, it's Kamala. She's always interrupting me when I'm trying to give her the specials and says she won't confirm her order until she's done asking her questions. But then he thinks to himself, wait a second, I got to pay the rent. I got kids at home to feed. I got to put money on the table, and I'll be damned if somebody in Congress is not trying to take away my Obamacare right now. So what does he do? He goes out there and he gives them the best damn service they ever had. And he goes out and he's like, hey, Kamala, how you doing? I loved you in those Kavanaugh hearings last week. Woo! And he's like, Mina, got a Phenomenal Woman t-shirt. Woo! And he gets it done because literally his livelihood depends on it. So back to the real world, we know that Mitch isn't going to do this, but that's okay because we got the Rock sisters. We got all of y'all in this room doing amazing work out there. We are building a bench of leaders. In California, we have leaders like Christina Livingston at ACE Action, who's putting renters' rights on the ballot. We've got Mia and Maying and the APIN crew that are fighting for clean air for our communities. We've got Andrea Guerrero down hustling in San Diego to flip 2 congressional seats. We've got Melissa Hurtado, who's running for Senate in the Valley. We've got Jovanka Beckles running for AD 15. We've got Latifah Simon. We have racial equity and justice on track. We have Tamisha Walker in Contra Costa, Monica Wilson in Antioch. The list goes on and on and on. And that brings me to our next speaker, Senator Holly Mitchell, who I like to say, yes, give it some love. For those of you outside of California, She is the gold star standard of state legislators. And there's a lot of things that I can say about Senator Mitchell, from sweeping juvenile and criminal justice reform legislation to partnering with communities to her advocacy around climate, early childhood education. But I'm going to sum this up in 6 letters because I was on a panel with her a couple of months ago and somebody said, wow, Holly, we need like 100 of you. Like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to make this work out? One, my answer was like, join the California donor table because that's how we get these kinds of things done. And then she just shrugged and said, yeah, y'all need to do that. But until then, I'm just going to be at GAW, GSDN all day. And the crowd was like, what does that mean? And I was like, grown-ass woman getting shit done. Duh. Welcome, Holly Mitchell. Thank you.
Let that be a lesson to all of you. Be very careful what you say in public places, because someone might remember. So before we get started, let me capture all of you. Sweet Honey in the Rock very eloquently sings, "We are the ones we've been waiting for." And I have to say, sometimes I wonder, but when I look out at this room, you don't have this vantage point. I believe them. You are the ones that we've been waiting for, and we're going to get this done. Harriet Tubman said, "I could have freed more people if they knew they were enslaved." Fannie Lou Hamer said, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired." And I had to make a conscious decision to save my health, my emotional health, my physical health, to move beyond that and decide that I was going to be glad to be alive right now. I'm going to embrace all the power in this room, and collectively, we're going to kick his ass. And you may be asking yourself, which his? All of them. It was so wonderful to hear from my sister from Arizona about the progressive actions they're taking in Arizona. And it was also deeply disturbing to realize that the California legislature had her very exact experience this last year. It was very disturbing as we fancy ourselves the progressive blue state that we are. Sometimes there are lighter shades in blue than others. As my sister, Assemblywoman Carrillo, said earlier, all Democrats ain't created equal. And so don't be complacent and get comfortable assuming because you live in California that it's all good. We have work to do, sisters. So let's paint by numbers, shall we? Statehood, 1849. Since then, 4,500 men have been elected to serve you in your California state legislature. Since statehood, 157 women have been elected to serve you in your state legislature. Since statehood. We currently have 31 members of the Women's Caucus, 19 of whom are women of color. And yet with those dismal paint by numbers, I'm also proud to stand here before you as a member of the California State Senate and say that the first time since statehood, members of the Senate elected a woman to be our leader, our President Pro Tem. An openly gay woman from Appalachia, nonetheless. And I'm also proud to stand here and say that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle in the State Senate elected a woman to be their leader, Pat Bates. And so for the first time in history in California, when you look at that picture we take every year of the entire California State Senate, there will be 2 women standing in the middle, in the aisle, in charge of that body. That's a powerful statement. The Center for the American Women in Politics at Rutgers says, when women run, we win. And I'll be the first one to tell you that it's not easy. It's hard. It's hard to raise money. It's hard to wear your naturally curly hair and be a candidate and convince those who run campaigns that people are going to elect me because of what was inside of my head, not because I chose to wear my hair locked. It's hard to convince other women to not be judgmental and to accept me as my single adoptive parent self, mid-career, mid-age, 6 foot tall, black, unapologetically black, confident woman. That I could lead, as I had done, a child development organization, $500 million budget, that I could lead, that I could step up and be the first black woman to chair the Senate Budget Committee. But we're the first ones that have to step up when women put themselves out there and say, I think I'm going to do it, I think I'm going to do it, and jump. We have to convince them that we will be there to catch them, that we will walk the precincts, and that we'll write the checks. And that while it's wonderful to hear about all these organizations who are going to reframe the way campaign finance operates on a very personal, individual level, that you have to reach down in your pocketbook and write a check to a woman who has declared that she is going to represent us in any body of government. And so it's wonderful for us to convene and gather and get pumped up and meet each other, but you have to make a decision about what you're going to do when you leave here today. Some will run, some won't. But everyone has to make a decision about one thing, minimally one thing you're going to do when you leave here today. Whether it's phone bank, whether it's make sure all your friends and families and neighbors vote, because guess what, they're not. Whether it's doing whatever you can do in your respective states to step up and step out. Why should you care? Well, for me, it's obvious. I'm clear that I'm in elected office because there's nothing else I could be doing right now with my life. I'm clear about that. I think I'm very blessed about having that own sense of personal clarity. But why should you care? If you care about health access for all, if you care about housing for all, if you care about quality child care and early education and high quality education for all, if you care about creating a safe workplace for all, if you care about ending the cradle to prison pipeline for all, then you too don't have a choice but to figure out what role you're going to play in helping to solve many of these national, state, community, in our own homes dilemmas that we're all encountering. It won't be easy. I'll be the first one to tell you. But I have to say, when the alarm goes off, and having turned 54 last Friday, I feel a little tightness in my back or my knee. All I have to think about is Sister Dolores. Did you see her jump up these steps? We are in the presence of our very own royalty. And none of us get to think that our lives, our challenges, our kids, our college freshmen who are making me crazy, trump our individual and collective responsibility to create a California in which we all want to live in, raise our children in, and grow old in. So I'm expecting to see all of you beyond today, figuring out what you're going to do in your own communities, coming up to the state capitol when Wendy and I call you because they're trying to break us down with some progressive bill we're trying to put across the finish line. We have to have our hands on each other's back. You know, I came up out of the Black women's self-help movement, Billy Avery out of Washington, D.C. And through the self-help movement, there is this notion that when a woman is struggling and trying to keep it together and tell her story, that you simply come up and put your hand on her back. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not going to make a suggestion or push you in one direction or the other. I am simply going to rest my hand on the center of your back. And so everybody in here needs to reach to the sister to your right and put your hand on her back. Didn't that feel good? And that is just sister to sister, our way of saying, Salbona, I see you. I am here if you need me. And together, we're going to kick his ass.
Give it up one more time for Holly Mitchell. This next woman needs no introduction. She's a principal at Black Futures Lab, the strategy and partnership director for the National Domestic Workers Alliance, and the co-founder of Black Lives Matter. Please give a warm welcome to the Bay Area's own Alicia Garza.
What's good, she the people? I said, what's good, she the people? My name is Alicia Garza, and I believe that Black people deserve to be powerful in politics. Did y'all know that Black women voted in higher rates than any other ethnic group in the last 3 election cycles? Do y'all know we're like 3% of the US Congress? You see, America spends so much time shaming Black people for not voting, but really, we should all be ashamed of how few Black women are making decisions and allocating resources, while we continue to ask Black women to save us, time and time again. Black women work hard to hold our families, our communities, and our democracy together, but yet our democracy is not working hard enough for Black women's families and our communities. In my work at the National Domestic Workers Alliance, we put Black women front and center through an organizing program called We Dream in Black. I love that name. We believe that Black women are an important part of how we win rights, respect, and dignity for the millions of domestic workers in the United States, and a critical part of how we will transform the economy from one that is predatory to one that is rooted in care. At this very moment, our members are knocking doors across the state of Georgia. Black women from at least 8 countries, all of whom are domestic workers. And they're doing that to strengthen democracy and make history, or should I say, herstory, in Georgia. In my work at the Black Futures Lab, we have talked to more than 20,000 Black people across the country, asking a very simple question. What do you want to see for your future? And we'll use that information to influence policy in cities and states across the nation. That is how we make Black people powerful in politics. In my work with the Black Lives Matter Global Network, we affirmed that all Black lives matter. And while police violence is a key issue that impacts our communities, it is but just one of the things that we care about. We challenge the notion that Black men are the only people being impacted by state violence. We join people like Kimberly Crenshaw and the African American Policy Forum and Black Youth Project 100 in demanding that we also say the names of Black women who have been killed by police, vigilantes, intimate partners, and the inability of our democracy to tend to our needs. We would not have known about Renisha McBride, who was shot in the face by Ted Wafer, had Dream Hampton not demanded justice, and we would not have convicted him of murder had there not been a movement pressing the world on the different ways in which we are failing Black people in general and Black women in particular. You see, it's not difficult to engage Black people
in the decisions that impact our lives. Unless, of course, you have a vested interest in making sure that we don't have a say in those decisions. Unfortunately, this is the norm instead of the exception to the rule. Black women are more than 30% of caregivers in this country, but most of them cannot afford their own health care or child care. And asking Black people, including those who are rural and urban, immigrant and US born, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, gender nonconforming, gender variant, incarcerated and formerly incarcerated, what we want to see for our futures is not difficult. But apparently, what we learned is that a survey like the one that we're doing has not been done in more than 150 years. Oh yeah, that's right. We are doing the largest survey of Black people since slavery was formally abolished in this country. I believe that Black people deserve what all people deserve: access to quality and affordable care, families that stay together and thrive together, clean water, food, and air, families out of cages, quality education, and an economy and a democracy that works for us and with us to shape our futures. We deserve to live full lives, but too many of our political institutions take Black people for granted, especially Black women. Now, this summit that we're at today, and it is incredible, is in the legacy of women of color coming together to say we are ready to set our own agenda. In fact, 2 years ago today, a coalition called We Won't Wait, led by powerful women of color like Tracy Sturdivant and Alicia J. and Ai-jen Poo, who you saw earlier this morning, brought together more than 1,000 women of color, talked to 3.1 million people over kitchen tables to build an agenda that puts our needs front and center. What we learned is that women of color across the nation want to see ourselves reflected in politics. We learned that women of color across the nation are more likely to show up at the polls when we have something to show up for. We learned that an intersectional agenda that includes all of us is not just necessary, but completely possible. Well, we all know what happened in 2016. I mean, are we clear? One of the hardest parts about the outcome of that election was that it confirmed what we had been saying all along. Don't just appeal to Black people culturally. Address the very real needs in our communities, and we'll have your back. So here we are. We have another shot in November. We have another shot in November. And the true test of whether or not we've learned anything about what it takes to win will be in 2020. So, in case we weren't clear, here are some top lines on how best to engage Black people. And I'm warning you now, the information contained herein is not shocking, at least not to us. Number one, Black people are not a monolith. We are complex and we are diverse. We are immigrant, transgender, we are queer, we are rural, we are urban, and you cannot use criminal justice reform as a euphemism for Black people. We care about a lot of issues, and criminal justice is one of them, but it isn't all of them. Speak to what we care about, and don't you dare just talk to us about economic inequality. Number two, because we are not a monolith, because we are diverse and complex, you must diversify how you reach out to us. We don't separate ourselves into tiny pieces, and you should not either. I am Black, I am queer, I am a woman, and all at the same time. There's at least 8 languages that Black people speak in this country, y'all. Figure out how to have conversations with us in the languages that we're most comfortable with. If you're going to show up at our restaurants, dance with us, and dance like us, at least take the time to sit down with us and talk to us about how we eliminate college debt and how we address police violence and how we make sure that our children grow up to be adults. And number 3, put some respect on our names. Stop telling us that we don't turn out, that we're too lazy to vote, and start demanding that anybody who seeks an office that makes decisions over our lives gives us something that we can roll with. We know a little something about making the right decision, but we do get tired of always having to do what's going to save humanity rather than get our needs met. My name is Alicia Garza, and I believe that Black people deserve to be powerful in politics. Thank you.
Gawatsi Halpa. My name is Ana Theachino. I am from Acoma Pueblo, New Mexico. I am the Advancement Director for Ultraviolet and a co-founder of a new project called Advanced Native Political Leadership. Today is my distinct honor to introduce my dear friend, Deb Haaland. Indigenous communities make up just 1% of the total population nationwide and hold just 0.03% of all elected positions. So we understand that we cannot protect our communities or move forward alone. For years, Deb has cultivated relationships across cultures, issues, and faiths with an authenticity so compassionate it's beautiful and reflective of our collective values. When she is elected in November, she will be the first Native American woman to serve in Congress. As a single mother who struggled with making ends meet, she brings with her the strength of our ancestors who gifted us the survival skills and intelligence necessary to adapt to the harshest of environments. And she does this all with thoughtful strategy, humor, and grace. Please join me in welcoming our next Congresswoman from the beautiful state of New Mexico, Deb Haaland.
Thank you, everyone. Hello, everyone. Hey, how are you? So good to see good friends, my Emerge sisters. We call them Emergistas in New Mexico. Yes. My name is Deb Haaland. I'm the Democratic nominee for New Mexico's 1st Congressional District. So happy to be here. I'm so happy to be with you here today. And gosh, look at this room. Isn't it amazing? Amazing women leaders. That's what we need to push us forward for this election coming up. We're in Indian land. And I humbly ask the Muwekma Ohlone people that my words be taken in a good way. I first want to acknowledge the record number of trans women of color murdered on the streets this year and the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women and a surge in hate crimes against our Muslim communities, and we must fight for them. I come from a small Pueblo village in central New Mexico, and I'm so grateful that my grandparents protected my culture and traditions for me. If elected in November, along with Sharice Davids in Kansas, we'll be the nation's first ever Native American Congresswomen. That's important because representation is important, but my election is important for a different reason. We need more people who understand struggle, who understand persistence, and who know what it means to be fierce in the face of difficulty. My first job during high school was at a local bakery for $1.95 minimum wage. When I graduated high school, I was promoted to cake decorator. I love decorating cakes, but no one I knew was talking about going to college, and no one encouraged me, including my parents, who neither of which went to college. I spent 10 years decorating cakes, beautiful cakes, I might add, before looking in the mirror one day and deciding I wanted more. 6 years later, I was 9 months pregnant and graduating from the University of New Mexico. I went on to earn my law degree with my beautiful queer daughter by my side, and it was really there that I realized my work could have an impact. As a second-year law student, I had worked very hard to pass a bill in the state legislature. It gave in-state tuition to members of New Mexico tribes regardless of their residency. The law has helped the most underrepresented people in higher education to achieve their educational dreams. That experience left me with one mission: to help elect Democrats who cared about the things that I care about. 15 years later, here I am running for Congress, and for no other reason than I worked really hard to get here. I want to give a shout out right now to all the single moms in this room. Yes. Because if it's one thing I know, single moms know how to get things done, right? Without money and without a lot of other things too. My beautiful daughter Soma and I were a team. We bought our clothes from thrift stores, and that hasn't changed just because I'm running for Congress. We were experts at making beans and rice, and we sometimes slept at friends' houses, but we had each other and we had our families. I often forget that at times we were homeless, that we ever needed food stamps, or that we lived for so long on credit cards, because we had a beautiful, strong family who supported us when times were tough. We were like so many New Mexicans, struggling, and I never felt out of place. As Americans, though, we've become too comfortable with poverty. Our leaders often say no one who works full-time should ever go hungry, should ever be homeless, should ever be poor, but that is our country's reality. It's time we find our footing to work for the solutions to bring our people up, to work to eradicate this obscene pay inequity that is destroying our working families. I believe we can do better, that we can think bigger, and with more women in leadership roles after Election Day 2018, I believe we, us single moms, daughters, aunties, and even grandmas, can commandeer the conversation and right this ship. American voters right now agree, for the first time in history, a majority of Democratic nominees for Congress are women and people of color. And not only that, but Democratic voters are voting in greater numbers for diverse nominees. There's a reason for that. And the fact that our own president this week slashed the number of refugees America will accept by nearly 70% has set our country and our world on a dangerous path with our environment. And he and the Republicans talk of tying SNAP benefits and Medicaid benefits to work requirements. And yes, it just activates us, doesn't it? And by the way, no to Brett Kavanaugh. My campaign is the longest I've ever worked on any campaign, and I've worked on many. 18 months of speaking up for our need as a country to transition into 100% renewable energy. 18 months of speaking up for our land, water, and animals as the Republicans do all they can to wreak havoc on our country, including their bromance with the fossil fuel industry and giving up our public lands. 18 months of a fight that has continued since I was a young woman for women's reproductive rights, for labor unions to have the ability to collectively bargain, and for universal early childhood education. It's time for us to start thinking big together. It's time to start using our collective power to put people before profits, to get big money out of politics, and to ensure that families come first. Together we can make this happen. Together we can make big ideas our reality, with programs like universal child care, Medicare for all, and a Green New Deal. We'll fight the hatred sweeping our nation so that our children don't just survive but thrive. They say this year is going to be a blue wave. I say that isn't enough. We need a wave of representation for women of color, people with disabilities, our LGBTQ community, for poor people, for Muslim women, for Native women, working people, and for everyone who has been left out of our country's leadership. Because when we have true representation, we will build a better America together. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Give it up one more time for Deb. Well, folks, it is that time. It's time to eat. We are going to take a lunch break now so that we can feed and nourish our minds, our bodies, and our souls. Lunch is provided for you all downstairs on the first floor where you had registration. There are places to sit both inside and outside, so feel free to choose whichever you'd like, or you can come back up here as well. We want to once again remind you to continue sharing your experience and your stories with folks online with hashtag SheThePeople18. We will be back here in this room at 12:50. If you're not done eating, then feel free to bring your lunches back, but we will see you here to start sharp at 12:50. Thank you and enjoy your lunch.